I left a voicemail on. You guys know you live in L.A., so you probably know this legend. Bill Murray doesn't have like representation. He just has this 1-800 number and a voicemail line. So I left a voicemail for him while I was watching season 4. I called him and left a voicemail.
What did you say?
I just said, "Call me back." Like.
Wait. You had to preamble it with who you were.
I said, "My name is Dan Harmon. I created an NBC show called Community. I would like to talk to you as soon as possible about the possibility of you."
Did you stutter that much during?
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. I didn't want to try too hard or try to not try too hard. I probably just sounded like a robot.
I was just like today on a plane with Joel Murray, his brother, the youngest Murray, and he was saying that Bill has recently done a TV guest on something, and before that it was Silver Spoon. Or Different Strokes. Like that's how long it was.
Silver Spoon was the movie that Silver Spoons was based on.
Family Ties.
Was it Family Ties?
He was the alcoholic brother who ruined a corporation.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Adam Goldberg.
Adam Goldberg.
I mean, we can't verify if he's right or wrong yet.
Adam Goldberg for the sociopathic win. He doesn't kill. He's Machiavellian. He doesn't care. He contributed, and I sneak out into the night, and then we'll all be like, "What? There's no show called Family Ties." But he'll be up to his neck in puss. That's all he cares about.
To his neck in puss.
So I left a voicemail for Bill Murray. Is there anything I don't know?
But do you know what happens next? Like what's pursuant to
Bill
that?
Murray calls me back, and we hang out. And
But does he have somebody call you back? Do you know how that works?
No, I don't think. I think he's. I mean, he's like this weird, mysterious man that like. I don't know. I mean, ask the guys that made Zombieland. I think they just called his number and left a message, I assume. I don't know. Like, I think he just calls you back and goes like, "Hey, it's Bill Murray." I don't know. I know it's not going to happen to me, but it's like I think it was a healthy exercise because I was watching the Jeff Meets His Father episode. Of course, I always wanted Jeff's father to be Bill Murray. I kept putting off the meeting between Jeff and his father because I kept hoping that somehow fate would allow for that to be the case. I named him Jeff Winger. His last name's Winger after Bill Murray's character in Stripes. I just always thought that Jeff Winger's dad would be Bill Murray. But there's something awesome about having all of those preconceived notions kind of ripped away from you. It's kind of it's exciting.
How much would that fuck?
There's something awesome about being held down and watching your family get raped on a beach. It's liberating. It makes you focus on what's important.
Happy Father's Day, by the way, everybody. Did you call your dad today?
I did. Yeah, I called my dad. Erin was calling her dad, so I had nothing to do. So I called my dad. My dad. One of the coolest things about him is the second coolest thing about him is that he knows how to do a quick surgical Father's Day call. Like he's wanting to get off the phone as soon as I am. No sooner, no later. Erin's dad will just hang up on her, like, which is weird. It's a weird fantasy we all have. Like, I wish my dad wanted to talk less. But her dad is like he's her dad.
Because she goes on and on, or because
well, I'm sure she does. But Erin's dad, by her report, has this weird phone behavior that is similar to people in TV and movies. The way they never say goodbye or hello, they just they go, "Okay, well, see you then," and they just he just hangs up on her all the time. You can ask her about it later.
All right.
My dad, I guess, because it is Father's Day, I do want to, because I talk so much sometimes when I'm talking to a microphone, because like a hamster that knows which lever gives him a treat. Like I know that I was my parents were 70s hands-on parents, and I know that's it's such a fucking button you can push to make people go, oh, that's so cool. Your dad hit you once. And I think all of our parents were dicks. And the thing about being a parent is that it's a thankless fucking job. If you're doing it right, it's thankless. I think everybody in LA and everybody in our generation probably is starting to realize that there's an epidemic among Generation X of parents who try to be their kid's best friend, to try to be perfect, and we're all seeing how those kids are turning out. Parenting, you when you atone with the father, as Joseph Campbell would say, you become an impersonal cosmic force. You make it sunny, you make it rain. Like, the kid is never really going to do anything but complain when it's raining and do nothing when the sun is shining. And your best reward is that they grow up into a human being and they go out in the world and they're not, we're human beings. How often do you, in the midst of your awesomeness, do you stop and go, good thing my parents were born? Like, you're all about yourself, and you're on your own little adventure, and your parents at best are like, you remember fond things about the, warm little cuddly memories, or them just hitting you with a belt. But my dad, I will say, because it takes too much longer and is too it's not as easy to say, like, holy shit, my dad was awesome, like in very, very specific ways. Your father, if you're lucky enough to have one, it is the first guy you meet. He is your male role model. That means that the way that he treats women it's not necessarily how you're going to treat women, but it is the first instance of a man treating a woman some way that you witness. And I think I owe all of my fights with Aaron to a kind of the fact that I found a woman that has a kind of semi-compatible understanding of how a man and a woman fight constantly, and we enact these dramas and all this stuff. But that's, if you go to enough therapy, you can wipe that out. You can recondition yourself. As I've always said, Hitler's dad didn't kill 12 million Jews, and if Hitler had a son, he wouldn't kill 3 million. It doesn't work that way. It's just, anyone can be different from how they were raised or who they were raised by. But the stuff that works, because there's no reason for you to overcome it, that's the stuff that really counts. And I think my dad's, the coolest thing about him was he was just a self-made man. He wasn't like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack. It wasn't like fuck you, society. He was so lowborn, my dad, that he never even got the cockiness to do it out of spite. He only just knew that no one would ever help you unless you helped yourself. And every time every piece of wisdom I ever got from him while I watched him earn the money that we used to buy our food, and it was always all the messaging that went into my brain about what a man's role is in this world and within his family was very, very strong, positive messaging, because my dad was a bootstrapper and just dyed in the wool, fuck rich people, fuck kissing ass. My dad said, I interviewed him for a 6th grade project. It was interview your dad and ask him 10 questions or something. And I asked, I was a little 6th grade journalist, and I interviewed him in the basement where he would hide and make stained glass and try to forget about how much his dad hit him. And he would always wear this V-neck Hanes T-shirts with a Sharpie pen clipped to the collar, because he would just take the Sharpie pen and mark it all over the place. I know that I'm also famous for sticking the Sharpie pen up my ass. It's really not related, I don't think, but
it smells like Origin Story.
Certainly in the hands of a Christopher Nolan. This is starting to come together. Yeah. But I remember my dad sitting behind this desk in this dark basement while I sat there and tried to fulfill the obligations of this elementary school interview project. And I said, what's your advice to young people? And my dad said, don't kiss anyone's ass. Don't do it. if you they will you for the rest of your life, everyone will always tell you, pick your battles, kiss a little bit of ass, and then you get to stop kissing ass later. It's a lie. They all just want their ass kissed. They think that if they tell you that, they're going to get to kiss less ass too. It's all garbage. It's all bullshit. You have to just do everything yourself.
It's pretty spicy stuff for a 6th grade project.
Yeah, but he didn't, in that regard, he didn't.
He wasn't kissing your 6th grade teacher's ass.
He wasn't kissing my ass. He wasn't talking down to me. He wasn't like sugarcoating it. He's talking to another little guy. I think in a lot of ways my dad was, like I can clearly see sometimes when I think about when I talk to his biological mom about his childhood, you think about your dad as a child. Like that's the atonement with the father when you realize that your dad was once an animal out there trying to figure things out. I remember talking to his mom about. She told me this story about how my dad in the trailer park they grew up in, he loved money. Because they didn't have any. Like you'd love it. Like, he didn't love it like Scrooge McDuck loves it. He loved it like a fucking the monkeys in 2001 love a monolith. He'd have like $6 and he'd keep them in a coffee can and he would iron them and wash them. And stack them up and count them and he kept them in a coffee can and then had a special spot where he buried them because he wouldn't keep them in the trailer where he lived because that was less safe than burying it like an animal because of the guys his mom would bring home. And so he had buried treasure, and then at some point I think someone got wise and probably saw him. I think I told my dad the story, and my dad was like, "No, that was that fucking guy." My dad knew who dug up his coffee can.
Wow.
And my dad was all, but I mean, his mom was telling me this story when I was in my 20s, and I was like, "Holy shit!" My dad was like a little guy that like with a coffee can of dollars that got taken from him. Like he was bullied. He was up against all odds. My dad survived the polio epidemic. He walks with one of his legs is withered because so many of his peers they got wiped out in this epidemic in the 50s. But he survived it. But it cost him a bunch of muscle tissue in one of his legs. This is kind of burly guy with these Popeye forearms and this big red mustache, and he walks with this limp. And the limp somehow always made him more foreboding than if he walked like a regular guy. Anyways,
what was your phone call like today?
It was dumb, boring. Fuck that guy. No, it's terse, my dad and I, I remember being in my 20s and being back in Milwaukee for some reason, and I took a tour with my dad of this facility. Here's the thing about my dad. My dad was the video duplication king of the Midwest. He started out mopping floors at a film lab in Milwaukee, and it was sort of like the Boogie Nights thing. Like there was this new thing called VHS that started happening, and my dad told his boss, I think that VHS is going to probably make a lot of this stuff obsolete. All of this film duplication that we're doing, these slides that we're making for people who have cooking instruction videos or whatever. And his boss was like, come on, whatever. Celluloid. Who will ever defeat that for the transmission of information? And my dad started his own company, which meant that he took 2 VCRs and hooked them together in my bedroom and duplicated a tape 10 times for one client that needed a how to make bread video duplicated or something. So got enough money to buy 2 more VCRs, and then he rented a small office space and had 2 racks of VCRs and was siphoning clients off of this company that he used to work for because they're all going, oh shit, VHS, this is where we're going. And my dad started that, rode that wave, started his own business, ended up having 50 employees in a big building, and making his own, VHS tapes and like a part of the building, like really just like did it, like took that business to its peak, sold it to his biggest competitor, who was like the video king of America, and then just as DVDs came along. So there was a guy that worked for my dad, who started his own business after my dad sold his. He had a DVD duplication facility. And I was back in Milwaukee, and I walked around with my dad and this guy who was basically my age. But he was this guy that had worked for my dad for years. And the guy was showing him the DVD duplication facility that he had created, this little ragamuffin kind of like 6-employee kind of operation. And my dad was looking around and he got the whole tour, and he went, it's a pretty good operation you got going here. And the guy said, I learned from the best. And my eyes involuntarily started squirting water, and my heart
It's called crying, Dan.
Look, water is leaking from their eyes. It's called tears. It is a symbol of their weakness. Ming the Merciless. Because I realized, oh God, this guy that came home at 10 p.m. every night, he was fathering people that it was easier to father. It was basing it on like, what do you do? And do you do it well?
Oh, you didn't cry because you were proud of your father. You cried because you were like he had other surrogate children.
I cried because I just did this flood of realization. It was like when you're a kid and your dad goes to work, and then your dad works that hard. You think of work as being a Beetlejuice void outside the door, where there's sandworms and time doesn't exist out there. And in that moment, it was like a sitcom epiphany where it was like, oh no, work was family. Work was young men who looked up to him and who he was able to connect with because they weren't his sons. And they looked at him as an important man and tried to impress him and regarded his favor as worthwhile, whereas he had a much more complicated, messy relationship with the guy that was generated from one of his loads. I was like, how are we ever gonna, have that traditional father-son relationship when, he work was what meant everything to him, and then cut to him coming to LA for the first time. And it was back when Channel 101 had just gotten a pilot on VH1, and we were all hanging out in a bar, all these Channel 101 kids, and my dad, I walked him out to his car after he spent that time. You met him that night at the bar, and it was like we were just celebrating the fact that, oh God, we're going to do a sketch show that's based on Channel 101. We've been doing this thing for no money forever, and now we're going to do a couple episodes of this thing on this basic cable show and station, and then we went out to the car, and my dad was like, I can't remember what he said. He was like, it's pretty impressive. We got a lot of people in there that look up to you a lot. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's I just, wanted to be you. Like that's all I understand a man to be. And I just hugged him, and when you ask the question, how was the phone call for Father's Day, it was like, it's nothing. It's like, have you eaten any deviled eggs lately? Yes, I have. They're good. They're so deviled. I gotta go. Bye. It's not even like there's like a well of emotion pushing against a dam. It's just like that's not the channel through which my admiration for him, my connection with him is ever going to exist. That unconditional, weird, mammalian love, where it's just like, oh, my dad took me fishing, showed me how to throw a ball. My dad was crippled; he didn't know how to throw a ball. He was a nerd like me. But it's technical. There's so much love there, so much importance, so much admiration, but it's going through channels on the circuit board that are not designed to carry that signal. You're putting hugs through a fucking fiber optic wire, but the stuff is getting through there, and then sometimes it's I don't know.
How old is he now?
30. He also invented time travel. I buried the lead on this. I don't know. He's probably 60. I'm a bad son. I don't know. I don't know what color his eyes are. I don't know.
My dad, like, he was like the super dad. He was 40 or 41 when he had me, and so I've always known him with like he just looked like George Clooney. He had salt and pepper hair, and he could throw. He taught me how to throw a fucking curveball when you weren't allowed to in Little League because it was bad for your arm, which is why my right arm has no range of movement. Like I can scratch the back of my head with my left arm, and my right arm doesn't do anything because I could throw a wicked breaking ball as a child.
Wait, they found out that throwing balls is bad for kids' arms?
They said like you're not allowed to throw curveballs because it's a really unnatural movement on your shoulder and elbows and stuff. And so I had like crazy like. But I played tennis and stuff, but like also like he could fix anything, do anything. He was like Ma and Pa Joe. Like he moved west from Nebraska, and I was just in Nebraska 2 days ago, 50 miles away from the Davis farm where he was born, in between two towns, and like they really moved during the Dust Bowl, and he farmed beans and hops and whatever grew, and he went to Oregon and then came down to California, and then by the time he was a teenager, he had like. He had a car, and he went to the Korean War, and then came back, and he was like this really groovy Californian guy. But he can build and do anything. He's like a fuck off artist. He can draw or paint, sculpt, like anything with his hands. He can do engineering of any sort. If a horse nearby was winning, and he goes, "Oh, the horse is giving birth. I'll be right back." Like he's the guy that could do it. And he's the guy that if the captain and the navigator and the co-pilot all had bad fish. And the plane's going down. The fuselage of the plane would instinctively look at my dad and go, "That's our man." And he's 80 years old, but he's like, he came and saw a show I did in Vegas with Drew Carey and the Hoosline Gang, and he's white hair, like like kind of a turtleneck and a jacket. And he's kind of suave looking, and we're just having a conversation. And women that were younger than me, my age, older than me, his age. Kept crossing the casino to come up to him and say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. We have to tell you, you're the most debonair man we've ever seen in our life." And he doesn't have a big mouth. I talk too much. My dad doesn't. He just sits there and looks like he could land the plane, and he's the fucking best.
I've met him, like, for the podcast listeners, I think, like this is probably oversimplified, but just so you have a visual, like, Jeff's dad, kind of like Jay Peterman from Seinfeld. Kind of like
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah. But like we were kids. We were in Maui on a vacation, and someone yelled on the beach like, "There's a woman out there. She's drowning." And there's an old lady that got swept up in the current, and she was just floating out there. There was a dead woman out there, and I just remember that moment of like people just look around like, what are we gonna do? And then before you can even look back, my dad is out there and he pulls her in and he's giving her CPR. She was dead. It was like there was no helping it, but it was just like my memory of my dad is like he could fucking do anything. Like if this room caught fire, we'd all sit here and go, "Oh Jesus Christ, we're gonna die!" But if my dad were in the room and you hadn't seen him yet, you would just instinctively turn around and go, "There he is," and my dad would look around and he would stick his tongue out slightly, like. It just like his tongue would go out a little bit, and that meant I'll fix it. And I told my dad like years ago, like he's stoic, he's working class, he's a hard worker, and he's not a really emotional. Like my mom was really emotional. I'm more her emotionally. I cry watching you talk about your dad right now. Like I'm the first one to cry. My dad is very stoic, but not like in a tough ass way. He's just he keeps it in. And I told him one time, I wrote him a big card to say like how much I love him, and I'm gonna start crying. I warn you already. And I wrote him. I'll try not to, but I wrote him this big card. It's like, no, fuck, this is stupid. I'll just call him. So I called him up and told him how much I loved him, how much I looked up to him, and he was like, "What?" I was like, "Dad, all I do is brag about you. I listen to my friends' stories."
You said I was a booger-eating turd monster.
I was
Dad,
two. I
didn't
was
want
2
to clean
years
my
old.
room. I didn't have the word power. You were back then a booger-eating turd monster.
Now you're a hero. But I told him, I said, like, compared to my friends' dads, like, you hear these stories, there's these conflicts and these battles and, like, the distance and stuff. I said, like, if I grow up to be like half or like a third of the man, a third of the father, if I had a third of your work ethic, I'd be the coolest person in the world. Like currently, like other than you. See,
if I could smash a third of the puss.
Oh yeah. My dad got drunk one time. Were you there? We went out and had drinks one time. My dad lives in like near Laguna Beach, and Dan and I went there, and I had to take a stupid business call, and I came back in, and they were like best friends. And my dad had a couple beers and started telling a story that was like the sexiest, like getting laid story of all time. I'd never heard it before. But the thing is, like, I'd never been out with the boys. It was just, me and like it's usually family stuff. But he told this amazing story, and like you also know that that's not the beginning of it. Like he clearly is a. I told my dad, like, we're getting
puss
less
smasher.
He's a professional puss smasher. The Davises are getting less cool. I'm the least cool Davis. My brother's better than me.
We're on the Mayan calendar. We're in the seventh world. It's like.
But I went to Nebraska, and I'm meeting people, and you walk down the street, and these people that kind of walk tall, and they're very sweet, and they're very nice, and they're very focused, and they seem to enjoy their lives out there in a way that, like, if you go to a restaurant here in L.A., people don't like what they're doing. They got to be something else. They're not a waitress. They're not a fucking actor. I don't do commercials. I'm a film actor. Like everybody's bigger than what they're currently doing, so nobody's ever fucking pleased with themselves. And that's a good thing too. I mean, like ambition can be good, it can be bad, but it was really cool, like being 50 miles away from where my dad was born. My grandma told me a story because my grandma was the coolest. She died like when she was 87, I think, and the smartest, funniest, and just tough as fucking nails. And never had a sniffle in her life until she was so old that she just, I'm just going to slowly fall asleep and die with a smile on my face. And she was the coolest. And she said she made these beans. She made red beans. And I would go to her house, and I was broke. I was like in high school and college, I had no money. And I would go there, and she'd always have this big-ass kettle of beans in the fridge. And it was the most delicious thing I'd ever had in my life since I was a baby. I loved it. And she would always make them for me. And one day she's looking at me. She's like, "You really like those beans?" And I said, "This is my favorite thing in the world." And she goes, "That's so funny. It's like, I feel so bad about that." It's like when your father was a little boy, we were like in the Dust Bowl, and we were traveling, just itinerant farmers. That's all we had. All you had was food that you could dry and put a little water on and make something out of it. So she's really good at making beans delicious. And he's like, we ate beans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and your father loved them every meal. And he would come in and he would sing a little song. And he would go, cook beans, cook beans, cook beans. And he would do a little jig in the kitchen. And she would like cry because she's like, you should be having meat. Like, you should be eating something. And she goes, and if there was ever a chicken, if it was in August, that was Thanksgiving. Because there was not going to be a chicken. And so she's like, my grandma was too old and too cool and way too stoic to start crying about that. She's like, yeah, I felt like a bad mom. Like, because, I couldn't believe your dad liked beans that much. It's like, well, you fucking make really good beans.
N-word?
Nigga!